really being upscale all the time.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's move on to your training for your postings from that point on.
Okay, and in going into the training and that, as I said, I was an armourer to a ground trade, and I explained about what the Lord an armourer is. And in 1940, in the beginning of 42, I was posted overseas to Egypt, the Middle East, and we spent 8 weeks on the ship going down there because we had to go in convoy. And so I think there must have been about at least 5,000 people on the ship that I was on. It was called the Arundel Castle. And we actually went from England up to Scotland, and then from there we went out across the Atlantic, and we almost came across to the Canadian coast. Then we went down the Canadian coast, down the American coast, then we went right back across the Atlantic into Sierra Leone. It's the Gold Coast on the west coast of Africa. And we were there for a couple of days, and from there we traveled all the way around to Durban, which is on the southeast coast of Africa. And we were there for about a month, and then we were on board ship again, and then went up to Tufek, or Port Suez, in the canal. And it sits at the top of the Red Sea in the beginning of the Suez Canal. And from there we disembarked, and we were sent to this place called Kasfarit, and it was a reception center for troops and everything coming overseas. And from there, we were there for a short period of time, and then I was posted up to another airfield called Fayed. And this was just about halfway up the Bitter Lakes on the canal zone. And from there, I was an armourer, of course, to the ground trade. And from then on from there, I was working on Halifax bombers and Wellington bombers. Again, we did all the work that an armourer is supposed to do, like synchronizing the guns and fixing the guns, all this kind of thing. And while I was there, I volunteered to become aircrew, so I went and found out some information about becoming aircrew. And so I decided I'd like to be a gunner, seeing that I knew all about guns and aircraft and bombs and turrets and all this kind of thing. So I went to see about how I went about getting into aircrew. So they gave me all the information. We had to have an intelligence test, psychological test, aptitude test, and then, of course, you had medicals to see if you were fit enough. And then if they decided that you were fit enough there, then they sent you on the course. And so, anyway, I got through all of that, and then I was posted to an air gunner school, which was number 13 Air Gunnery School, and the name of the school was El Bala, and it was on the side of the Suez Canal, and it was about 11 kilometers outside a town called Ismailia, which was on the end of the Bitter Lakes. And the Bitter Lakes were called that because there's so much salt in it that, it's not like the Dead Sea where you can float on it, but you can't float in the Bitter Lakes, but it's very bitter. But anyway, from there, our air gunnery course was 6 weeks duration. And from there, we were taught about flying. We were issued with a lot of flying equipment and stuff like this. And we were told what aircraft we were going to fly on to do our air gunnery. And so it transpired from there that they would take up 6 UT air gunners, which UT means under training. And we would go out where the aircraft we flew on there was Anson aircraft, Avro Anson, and 6 officers would go up at one, but we only had 1 turret on board, so we took our turns at doing our air gunnery. The way we did our air gunnery, another aircraft towed a drogue, which was a white sleeve. You can see them at airfields there, which indicate the wind direction. And they were towed about 400 feet behind the aircraft. Aircraft depended on the ones we had available. Sometimes it would be a fighter, sometimes it would be another Anson aircraft. So the way they determined the efficiency of our gunnery and our aim was that all the ammunition that was installed on the aircraft was all in sequence. Now, every bullet had either a yellow ring on it, or a red dye, a green dye, or a blue dye. And then when each gunner had done his turn of firing at this drogue, as they called it, we usually had about 500 rounds each. And then when all that when each gunner had been on and done his turn at the air gunnery, then the exercise would terminate. We would come back, land, and then the drogue would be taken in, and then it would be taken into the hangar, and then every shot that had been fired that had hit the drogue would be counted, so they knew exactly how many shots each gunner had, because each gunner had a different color. And so this is how they determined how good you were at firing if it was an enemy aircraft. And so then they gave you a percentage of how many hits you had. And from there, when that course finished, you had a passing out parade, and there you were presented with your sergeant's tape. So once you passed out your course, you automatically became a sergeant. And you were also issued with your air gunner's brevet, and you were issued with your air gunner's logbook. So in this logbook, you kept a detailed note of all your flights, all your operations, what they were, what category you were, and all this kind of data that they needed, and so that they could verify it. And then after each course and each detail in that, a summary was made up, and it was signed by the commanding officer of the station. And so now, when we'd finished our air gunnery course there, I was posted up to Egypt, to Palestine, I should say, and there went on to Wellington Bombers, and I was a tail gunner on Wellington Bombers. And again, we did our operational training, which was OTU, which meant Operational Training Unit.
As the mother of John Gillespie McGee Jr., I have been asked to recite to you his poem, High Flight, which I myself dearly love. Oh, I have slipped the surly bonds of earth and danced the skies on laughter-silvered wings. Sunward I've climbed and joined the tumbling mirth of sun-split clouds, and done 100 things you have not dreamed of, wheeled and soared and swung high in the sunlit silence. Hovering there, I've chased the shouting wind along and flung my eager craft through footless halls of air. Up the long, delirious, burning blue, I've topped the windswept heights with easy grace, where never lark or even eagle flew. And while with silent lifting mind I've trod the high, untrespassed sanctity of space, put out my hand and touched the face of God.